Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mitchell with FF Real Talk, and welcome to the first Monday edition of the weekly waiver picks. I'm dedicated to y'all. I'm doing something that I'm not getting paid for, that I do for fun, for the people who take the time to listen and who, value my advice or whatever. I'm doing that during the Monday night football game. So you got to give me credit for showing love by doing this while the game is on. But with that said, I'm going to hurry up and get through this. As I told you in weeks past, all of these are going to be done on Mondays from this point forward. It's usually going to be done earlier than, what is it, 8:30 now, 8:30-ish or whatever now. So it's not going to be competing with Monday Night Football, but this is my first chance to get to record it tonight. So without further ado, we're going to get on to it. We just had a interesting week 6 with a lot of this fantasy year has been weird all the way around. The people you need to perform aren't. Some of the people you don't expect to perform are. So it's the same old game every week. But once again, you just got to bear with it and try to get people to help bolster your team or get rid of the people that are trashing your team. But this week, we're getting to that point of the midpoint of the fantasy season where waiver additions are getting to be thin and getting to be real. It's not much out there, so we're kind of reaching and grasping at straws with these people we're naming. But there's some value to be had, and we're going to start with the number one pickup of the week, and that's Blake Bortles. So far, Bortles hasn't been that solid as a real life quarterback. He's making a lot of mistakes. He's turning the ball over a lot. His timing hasn't seemed to be on, et cetera, et cetera. But he's shown moments of goodness through the first year and a half. But what you all know, especially at the quarterback position, fantasy and reality aren't always the same thing. Since week 2, this guy's lowest fantasy point outing was 15 points. Peyton Manning, for example, has only done better than Bortles' worst game since week 2, which is 15 points. He's only done better than that twice this year. And one of the games is as bad as Bortles' worst game of the year, the 9 points. That's better than all of Brady's, I'm not Brady, but Manning's other games other than those two. So just to let you know, at this point, I would rather have Blake Bortles than Peyton Manning all day. In ESPN leagues, they finally put Peyton Manning off the can't drop list because it's about time, because I've been wanting to cut him for a while, but he's been on the can't drop list. They finally took him off, and it's not a moment too soon, as far as I'm concerned. So again, Blake Bortles is right now, to me, a top 10 quarterback. And going forward, I'd rather have him than Stafford. I'd rather have him than Tannehill. I'd rather have him than Cutler, Flacco, and like I said, Manning. And these are all guys that were heavily drafted or somewhat drafted. So Blake Bortles is doing it. You can't ignore it anymore. It doesn't matter how good he is in real life. He's got the weapons with all the receivers, and he's got Julius Thomas back. This is a guy you want to have, especially as a great second quarterback, or in two quarterback leagues he's probably already taken. But this is more than a bye week fill-in at this point. This is a startable quarterback, a number one quarterback in my opinion. Number 2, James Starks. I don't know, guys. I have no clue what's going wrong with Eddie Lacy. I don't know what's really going on with that ankle. It must be worse than we thought it is. And it isn't like the situation in Denver where CJ Anderson and Ronnie Hillman aren't doing anything because their offensive line is so bad. The Packers offensive line is fine. It's just obviously Eddie Lacy is hurt. With James Starks, and the proof of it is James Starks on 10 runs yesterday got 112 yards. That proves there's something wrong with Lacy. So as long as there's something wrong with Lacy, Starks needs to be on all Lacy owners, if you don't have Starks already, you played yourself. But if he's out there, go out and grab him ASAP. This might be a long-lasting thing, and McCarthy's not saying, but we know Starks' talent isn't a fraction of Lacy's, but that's just proof of how good that line is and giving them time. So all Eddie Lacy owners need to have him, and Starks has standalone value. So he's definitely the number one running back pickup of the week. So definitely grab him. I wouldn't have a problem with it. Number 3, Stephon Diggs. This guy came out of pretty much nowhere. And if you guys know me and how I do things, I pretty much watch a guy who has a good game that no one much knows. I watch a week. And then if they have a second week, they probably make this list. Well, this guy had his second week. His first one was in week 4 before the week 5 bye. And this week he comes out with 129 yards on 7 catches. And it's obvious the main thing that's going on here. He has completely supplanted Charles Johnson, who a lot of us had drafted and had highly touted. I know I am. I take full responsibility as one of the people that thought Charles Johnson was going to have this breakout year after showing so much promise with Bridgewater last year. Not only is he hurt, he's just basically a bust at this point. But what's always good, when one person doesn't do well, somebody steps up. And Diggs is looking like the second guy for sure. But to me, he would be the one receiver I want to own simply because of upside, and that means over Mike Wallace. Upside, guys, just so you know, upside doesn't always mean potential or, youth or whatever. Upside also has to do with different things like not being ruined by money or by the league or gotten complacent or become feeling like an attitude of entitlement. A lot of receivers in particular and a lot of players they play in this league and then they get a contract and they don't play it out or they just become complacent. Upside is when a guy hasn't been ruined by that. We know Mike Wallace was ruined by that years ago, back when he got that deal with Miami. We don't have that with Diggs. That's why I want to have him more than Mike Wallace, production aside, because he's got that upside and he hasn't been ruined by all this stuff. He's trying to make his first check. So that's upside in and of itself. Stephon Diggs is the guy I definitely want to have. And though Bridgewater is looking more like a game manager than a quarterback, maybe it's going to emerge. And Diggs looks like a guy that you'll want to have. Number 4, Marvin Jones. I mentioned him a couple weeks ago. He's definitely assumed the second receiver role, wide receiver role, that is, with the Bengals, much like what Mohamed Sanu had last year. And it's definitely clear that he has it. But the thing about him, he is not always consistent. It's not week to week. But he's a touchdown maker. He puts them on the board. And this week he had another nice week. And this is one of those guys that for daily fantasy players, this will be the guy that you'll put in for cheap and he'll go off and get a big game any given week. So that's more like what I think he is as a DFS ad. And also for any of these guys, any of you guys in leagues where you're like after this week you might be 2-4 or whatever have you, and you just want to plug a guy that might blow up because he's boom or bust. At this point, sometimes it doesn't hurt to take a risk on a guy like this in this type of high-powered offense. AJ can't get it all. Tyler Eifert can't get it all. So this is one of those guys that can explode at any time. So Marvin Jones is a valuable pickup as far as I'm concerned. Number 5, Theo Riddick. I talked about this guy last week as a PPR must-own, but more so now he gets a bump even in standard because of this right here. Amir Abdullah is looking like trash out there. He hadn't done, if anybody who owns Amir Abdullah, and I've got him in a couple leagues, he hadn't done nothing all year. And in PPR leagues, Theo Riddick is getting it done. And this is another week of great receiving numbers, 50 receiving yards as a running back. I mean, I told you last week he led all running backs with catches. And at this point, I'd rather have them than any other Lions back without question. And with the Lions getting on the board with a win, it might be an uptick in their production and their hustle as a whole. So I'd want to own Theo Riddick if I've got some problems with running backs in my teams. Number 6, Brandon Oliver. Y'all remember this guy? Well, if you played last year, you do. Last year, 3 to 4 or 5 weeks stretch where he was a must-start fantasy commodity last year. And much like with Abdullah, Melvin Gordon is stinking up the place. He's doing somewhat better in terms of yardage, but he can't hold on to the ball. And you saw he got benched for that. And Brandon Oliver got the role. At this point, if Melvin Gordon doesn't improve, I can definitely see Brandon Oliver getting much more part of the rotation because we've seen him be productive before. And Danny Woodhead is very small and much too small to be a go-to lead back across the board. So I can see Brandon Oliver becoming a part of this rotation. So you might want to get him as a nice stash at this point. Number 7, Brian Hoyer. Yeah, the waiver wire has gotten that sparse to where Brian Hoyer's on the list. But all joking aside, Hoyer's numbers are serious. Over the past 3 weeks, he's averaged right at 20 fantasy points with 19.6. And any quarterback who gets 20 points a week in fantasy is a top 10 guy. That's all you have to say. And the main thing that's always been a point of contention with Hoyer is he's kind of a head case. With the whole thing with Johnny Football last year, some knocking on his heels to take the starting job, that kind of got in his head and his production. He's not the best quarterback at all anyway, let's just be real. But when he had all that Johnny Manziel stuff with him, that was getting in his head and interfering with him, making him a worse quarterback. He's been named a starter, clear cut. And I think that's going to bode well for him going forward. Again, when you're averaging 20 points a game, you're good. And we've seen Brian Hoyer be well enough before. So he's not going to be consistent. He's going to stink up the place enough. But this is a guy at this point, if you want to stream him over Peyton Manning because of production, I wouldn't blame you. And there's a lot of quarterbacks that I would play him over. So, as things move along during bye weeks, he's a good fill-in. Number 8, Michael Floyd. Nice to see you, big guy. He got 8 targets, 5 catches, and a TD. He's showing a little bit of signs of life over the last 3 weeks. 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's showing some life. And if you know him over the past few years, he's got all the ability in the world. But the reason he's on this list is more like with the Marvin Jones situation. He's on a team with a high-powered, pass-heavy offense. But unlike Jones, he's not the clear number 2. He's going to be the number 3 behind John Brown and Larry Fitzgerald. But with the talent to be a number 1 threat, he can score at any given time, especially when he's healthy like he seems to be right now. So those who are deficient at wide receiver, you can do worse than this. And he's out there in probably about more than 50% of leagues. Last I looked, I looked a few minutes ago, he was like 49 or something percent on. This is that little area where you might have the window to pick him up before he picks up steam. Number 9, Lance Moore. Like I said, the waiver wire is getting thin. I ain't no fan of Lance Moore, never have been, not even when he was with New Orleans. But he's talented enough. And in the past 2 weeks, he's got a touchdown with at least 5 catches. Again, we're grasping at straws, but a touchdown and 5 catches is a touchdown and 5 catches. And again, like I said with Theo Riddick, with Detroit getting back on the board with a win, it gives some momentum to everybody. Golden Tate gives some momentum to Megatron. So Lance Moore's uptick in value could be real. So again, for those who are in extreme desperation, Lance Moore is someone to keep an eye on. And number 10 is a split between 2 guys, Brandon LaFell and Ahmad Bradshaw. Brandon LaFell is pretty much a stash guy simply because he's on the Pats' high-powered offense. Anyone who knows LaFell last year, he had a breakout season, and he was the co-number one target with Julian Edelman, and wide receiver target, not including Gronk. But he had his injury problems, and he's reportedly back at practice now and eligible to come back in to be activated in Week 7. This is not necessarily somebody I'm saying grab now, but somebody who should definitely be on your watch list, especially with the way Tom Brady is playing right now. If he gets back into the fold and becomes another option, you could have a steal guy that can help you during playoff wins. This is that point in fantasy where we're starting to determine who are the better teams and who may be in the playoffs. Some leagues got some good teams just across the board, and it won't be until about week 10, 11 where it's decided. But these are the types of guys that you can add as they start producing who can help you win your weeks. Same as like Ahmad Bradshaw. All Frank Gore owners should have him on your watch list because he's the clear backup, and you know how productive he was last year over that Trent Richardson crap. He was the guy that you wanted to have. He just got signed last week, and he got a couple of carries this week. But Gore, the thing about it is, it's not a guaranteed thing with Ahmad Bradshaw because Gore is one of the most durable backs in the league. Though he's starting to slow down some, he doesn't get hurt really. You know, he's been 10 years being one of the more durable backs. So, but if something was to happen, Ahmad Bradshaw becomes an immediate top 25 running back. So there's no more to say than that, but keep him on your watch list. So, but anyway, that ends the list for this week. Like I said, we're doing it on Monday. Whatever's going on Monday Night Football, if someone were to pop in someone to add to the list, I might come in and type it in the description, but we missed that. Either way, good luck in the upcoming week 7. And if you got any questions, again, hit me up on Twitter, and I'll get back with you. All right, y'all have a good one.